Hello YouTube. A number of Soviet cosmonauts and later space explorers, cosmonauts of Russia and Ukraine, have been more outspoken than their American colleagues when it came to the subject of UFOs. But one Soviet cosmonaut was not only active in speaking about UFOs, but actually active and instrumental in helping ufologists and in the promotion of UFO and USO research in the Soviet Union. On September 30th, 2009, General Major of Aviation, Pilot-Cosmonaut Pavel Romanovich Popovich, or Pavlo Romanovich Popovich in Ukrainian, passed away. He was the first Ukrainian cosmonaut in history. He was always proud of his ethnicity. He was twice Hero of the Soviet Union honor recipient and had many other awards and medals. Pavel Popovich was greatly respected. He was a kind, nice, and decent person, always ready to help others. His life was intertwined with the turbulent history of UFO research in the Soviet Union, especially after 1978. In 1984, Pavel Popovich said that today there is a great compilation of observations of flying objects, and it is time to understand what we are dealing with. There is no sense to hide one's head in the sand like an ostrich and deny everything. The inexplicable must be researched. He was interviewed for that by Socialistiskaya Industria newspaper on August 5th for his article "Загадки небесных явлений: Mysteries of Celestial Phenomena." According to Popovich, most of the information about anomalous phenomena came from military and pilots, trusted, sane, and healthy people. Some of the reports were actually historically important. According to him, UFO data started being reported from the days of World War II. During the Kursk battle, Soviet aviators and witnesses on the ground observed mysterious objects in the sky. On May 29, 1984, Trud Soviet newspaper published an article where Popovich told the author about a case that took place on March 27, 1983 in the city of Gorky. This case was also investigated by the Gorky section of the UFO Commission that Popovich helped establish and was an important part of, and I'll mention it later. This object flew in the area of the city's airport. The airport's radars registered but could not identify the object. The object flew at an altitude of no more than 1 kilometer and the speed approximately 180 to 200 kilometers per hour. Flight controller Shushkin was the witness who had observed the object and said the object's size was similar to that of the Il-14 aircraft fuselage. But there were no wings. It was shaped as a cigar, its color was light gray steely, and it moved slowly across the sky. According to Popovich, the phenomenon lasted about 40 minutes. At a distance of 30 to 40 kilometers northeast from the airport, the radars lost it. Shushkin later corrected Pavel Popovich and stated that the UFO actually appeared over the city on March 28, 1983. It flew at an altitude of 400 to 600 meters and disappeared 10 seconds after it was sighted. Popovich had access to a number of interesting documents from the commission, and I'm sure from other sources too, and we'll get into that. There was a more dramatic episode that took place in January of 1978, and Popovich described it to Socialistiskaya Industria newspaper on August 6, 1984. During the flight of Yak-40 aircraft over the area between two settlements of Medvezhye and Nadim, the crew noticed something round, a very bright foreign body that approached rapidly and sometime later appeared straight in front of the aircraft. Every minute the size of this body increased. When the crash appeared to be imminent, the object soared right in front of the aircraft's nose, not causing any harm. Between the years of 1980 to 1989, Pavel Popovich served as the deputy chief of the Yuri Gagarin Cosmonauts Training Center. Popovich was born in the Soviet Ukraine on October 5, 1929. A young engineer and amateur pilot, Popovich joined the Soviet Air Force. In 1960, he was enrolled in the first team of Soviet cosmonauts. Popovich was the number 4 cosmonaut in the history of manned spaceflight. He underwent a full course of training for space flights aboard Vostok spacecraft. Pavel Popovich, as a boy, lived under the Nazi occupation for several years, and this fact could have destroyed his chances to become a Soviet cosmonaut, because in the USSR, when somebody lived under the Nazi occupation and was away from the Soviet control, he was almost considered to be a traitor, but definitely somebody who had to be investigated. The KGB took several months to study biographies of each of the future cosmonauts. Someone must have had the courage to overlook the fact that Popovich lived under Nazi occupation, and they let him continue his training. His first spaceflight was aboard the Vostok 4 spaceship in 1962. Later, Pavel Popovich was trained for the Soviet Moon Research Program. After the program was cancelled, Popovich underwent training for flights aboard Soyuz spaceships. His second mission into space was as the chief pilot of the Soyuz 14 spaceship in 1974. The flight was part of the Soviet program for military use of space exploration technology. Popovich's call name was Berkut 1 or Golden Eagle 1. Having docked with Salyut 3 orbital station, Popovich and his engineer had conducted military intelligence operations. By the way, the cover name for this secret Soviet space battle station was Almaz 2. Popovich and the engineer had infrared and powerful optical equipment, 14 special cameras, and even one 30mm cannon. One of their tasks was to capture the American Skylab station with 3 astronauts aboard. The Americans had a special name for Popovich. They called him Aggressor. But that secret military space program was later shut down. However, as I'll tell you later, Popovich did find something in the outer space in 1974. Some of the reports that were sent and read by Popovich were quite interesting. One such report was sent to the Central Commission for Anomalous Phenomena in the Environment by Galotikin, a mechanic from Leningrad. In 1980, he worked aboard Brilliant, a large fishing freezer trawler. On January 24, the trawler was operating at a distance of about 20 to 30 miles from the western Sahara coast. At 1300 hours, while Galotikin and other crew members were on the deck, they observed a black object, shaped like a cigar. The object flew toward the ship. It moved much slower than usual aircraft, and it made no sounds. The crew observed it for 5 to 7 minutes through binoculars. They were amazed that upon approaching the trawler, the object immediately disappeared. This sighting was mentioned also in the 2001 article, which was written by Valentin Psalomshikov, a well-known UFO researcher and author in Russia. Now I want to bring your attention to Popovich and the Setka program, which I have mentioned before, but for those who do not know, that's an important development in the world UFO research. In the 1978 period, the powerful Military-Industrial Commission of the Soviet Union created 2 UFO research centers. One was in the USSR Academy of Sciences, the other in the USSR Defense Ministry. The anomalous phenomena research in the USSR Academy of Sciences became the subject, actually later, of a special scientific research program, which was designated as Setka AN. The Soviet Ministry of Defense embarked on a similar program, the secret Setka MO program. Both centers aided each other's UFO research and exchanged information. The first act of the Setka AN resulted in the official sanction of the anomalous atmospheric phenomena as a descriptive term instead of the forbidden NLO or UFO. The Setka AN debunkers did their best to prove that there are no UFOs, only errors in observation of rocket launches, or at the very least, ball lightnings. But there had been occasions where anomalous phenomena had led to the unauthorized launches of mobile missiles, and on other occasions, the appearance of UFOs during Soviet military training exercises that resulted in the breakdown of radio communications and equipment malfunctions. The program ended in 1991, but a group of experts remained in the Department of the General Physics and Astronomy of the Russian Academy of Sciences, where they analyzed incoming reports until 1996. According to Russian UFO researchers, scientific arguments regarding the nature of UFOs had been the least of the military researchers' concerns. They did, however, pay close attention to the hypothesis that UFOs are manifestations of an extraterrestrial civilization. There had been concern with UFOs' quite unpredictable impact on military technology and on the personnel. They wanted to know how they could use UFO properties for their own pragmatic military needs. I need to add that in 1984, by the decision of the All-Union Council of Scientific Technical Societies, a Central Commission for Anomalous Phenomena in the Environment was established in the Soviet Union. The chairman was corresponding member of the USSR Academy of Sciences, Troitsky, and one of his deputies was General Major of Aviation Pilot-Cosmonaut Popovich. The address of this commission was published in the Soviet newspapers, and as a historical fact was as follows: 101000, Moscow, P.O. Box 764, Main Post Office, Commission for Anomalous Phenomena. The commission was born because those in charge of the academic research of the Setka program basically got rid of independent and active UFO researchers. They only left debunkers together with the military specialists from the military secret institutes inside the program. But those who studied UFO research independently in the Soviet Union did not want to take continuous scorn from the scientific debunkers. And they basically they moved the Academy of Sciences aside, and they directly approached military coordinators of the secret program. The initiative to create the commission was supported by military researchers who were tired of fruitless activities of the academic debunkers in trying to explain what UFOs are. The commission included all those who served the military Ministry of Defense research. Pavel Popovich played a role in its workings, although due to the secrecy and his oath, he had not revealed all that he knew. In 1990, Soyuz UFO Center, the first official public UFO research organization of the Soviet Union, was established. Its director was Vladimir Zhazha, a former naval officer, a submariner, and a long-suffering independent UFO researcher and lecturer. Its president, Pavel Popovich, clearly stated in interviews that he headed Soyuz UFO Center on behalf of his friends, UFO researchers. Popovich never considered himself to be an expert in the field of ufology. He did help those who tried to research it independently or as part of the secret Soviet program. His authority and reputation had greatly helped Azhazh's efforts to keep his organization viable in the post-1991 Russia. Popovich was also important when we look at the KGB UFO files release. In 1991, a file of KGB documents was provided to Pavel Popovich. The Soviet cosmonaut had urged the KGB to release the information. It was the second chief directorate of the KGB counterintelligence, or rather the 10th department within the directorate, control of the defense facilities, that had received UFO information. The file was 124 pages of printed text, contained copies of UFO reports, handwritten reports, typed testimonies, and notes from KGB informers, crew drawings, and eyewitness reports of UFOs. An accompanying letter was written by the deputy chairman of the Committee for State Security USSR, whose last name was Sham. This cooperation between UFO researchers and the KGB was unprecedented. It was a landmark in the UFO research in the Soviet Union and possibly the world. Years later, Sham stated that the KGB was not engaged in research of anomalous phenomena, and he pointed to the Setka program as the responsible entity for such research. I urge those who are interested more about Sham's statements to read Philip Mantel's article, The Real KGB UFO Files. I helped translate the materials, and in our books we present a lot more information about the KGB, whether it released all the files, and also the contents of those files. Quite fascinating. Now let's go on to Roswell. In 1992, on behest of UFO researchers, Pavel Popovich had contacted two Russian ministries to find out whether the Soviet-era archives contained documents pertaining to the Roswell crash. The reply from the Ministry of Defense stated that the officials of the Central Archive of the Ministry of Defense had conducted search of the materials of interest to Popovich. They did not find any Roswell materials. The second reply came from the Ministry of Security of the Russian Federation. No documentary materials about the case of the flying saucer crash in the area of Roswell, USA in the year 1947 were discovered, it stated. Nothing was found. However, it doesn't mean that they did not have it before. All it means is that they could not find it now. That was in 1992. Soviet intelligence was quite active in the United States in the 1940s, and it would not miss the Roswell crash controversy. And I already told you in my other presentations about the Stalin's meeting with Korolev, when Korolev was shown a pile of documents, including Roswell story, and told to present his assessment of the UFO danger based on those documents. So they definitely had something in the USSR. After every interview, Pavel Popovich had to sign a special document stating that he did not reveal any state secrets. He never did tell all he knew. He was a military person loyal to his oath. One thing comes to mind. His oath was to the Soviet Union, which ceased to exist in 1991. So, what secrets did he keep till the end? I'd like to mention his knowledge of the underwater UFO bases, USO bases. In 2006, Pavel Popovich gave an interview to Boulevard Gardona, a very popular Ukrainian magazine. He said that the inhabitants of Phaeton or Muna, which was an ancient planet with advanced civilization, believed to exist next to Earth ages ago, but which perished due to nuclear explosions. Popovich mentioned that the inhabitants of that planet probably visit Earth from time to time. The visitors' intermediate base is located in the area of Saturn, and they have three bases on Earth. One of them is in the Andes, the other in the Indian Ocean Trench, and the third one is located in the Himalayas, the famous Shambhala. The base in the Andes mountains they liquidated because human civilizations came too close. But they do have an underwater base at the bottom of the Indian Ocean Trench. Where did he get this information? He wasn't the only cosmonaut to mention ancient visitations of our planets by extraterrestrials thousands of years ago. I already told you about Grechko. Now Popovich's information is presented here. In the future, I'll tell you about more cosmonauts and what they knew. What's interesting to us all also is that Popovich recalled his own UFO sighting in 1978 while aboard an airplane flying from Washington to Moscow. He was returning from Pittsburgh, where Soviet academicians and others attended the International Gagarin Readings Conference. And those academicians also observed the strange object. The altitude was 10,500 meters. Popovich recalled that something actually urged him to keep looking out. He was sitting by the window. He noticed a white triangle object about 1.5 kilometers from the plane and some 10 degrees higher than the plane. This was estimated by others and himself as well. The cosmonaut shouted and ran to the crew. The onboard radar did not register anything, and nothing was registered on the ground pertaining to this observation. The crew had also observed the object, and they determined that its side was about 100 meters. The object did not resemble any known aircraft. It moved rapidly. The airplane flew at the speed of 1,000 kilometers per hour, while the object traveled about time and a half faster. This flying object easily overtook them and flew north, but they stayed within the range of vision for a minute. They, the professionals, could not determine what the object was. Popovich could not state that his sighting was really a secret weapon being tested. Although, according to him, in 90% of such observations, this is the case. A test of some new secret weapon development. Pavel Popovich had his own unique views on UFOs. For example, he did not believe any of the contactees. And in 2001 interview to the Russian newspaper, Popovich said that 95% of everything written about UFOs should be discarded as nonsense. And by the way, in the same interview with Boulevard Gardona Ukrainian publication in 2006, Popovich was asked whether he, a pilot and cosmonaut who grew up in the atheistic Soviet Union society, whether he actually believed in God. He replied that he was baptized, and in 1974, during his spaceflight, he understood that there is someone who had created stars outside the spacecraft's porthole, the moon and the other planets. When one sees this, one understands how infinite everything is. Popovich recalled thinking, someone had created it, and someone directs it all. Who has created the laws of celestial mechanics? All we did was to use them, to discern them, to explain them. That is why he thought about God. No matter what one calls him, there is one creator who has created everything. That's what he thought in 1974, and that's what he revealed to the Ukrainian newspaper. And by the way, to be baptized in the Soviet Union in the period when he was born was also not a very safe development. But that's what his parents decided to do. And that's how he described his views about God, which takes us back to 1974 when he was aboard the Soviet orbital space station. Popovich lived his final years in a settlement near Moscow, the so-called Star Village. At the time, 36 other former cosmonauts resided there. Popovich had a dream to be able to fly the spacecraft into space again to look at Earth from above. And the name of Pavel Popovich was given to a mountain region in Antarctica and a minor planet. And like I said, in the future I will tell you more about revelations and sightings of Soviet and then Russian and Ukrainian cosmonauts. I think you'll find this information to be fascinating. Thank you.